All right, this is day 6 in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Hilary, and this is pretty much the final phase of what I'm going to be showing in my adaptive strategy in a series, which basically was an evolution from having still very degraded strength and agility and vascularity due to the extreme heat waves and heat exhaustion and borderline heat stroke over the last couple of months, leaving me pretty much bedridden for about 22 hours a day. Lots of atrophy set in. So when the storm came and it became game time to get the flood sport action going, where I had to deploy the tarps and basically harvest or capture at least about I would say 600 to 700 gallons of water across two 20-foot by 20-foot tarps. And what I discovered was that my performance was degrading rapidly to the point where I could barely stand, I could barely crawl. And even if I got up in the middle of the night and started before dawn, as I am here on day 6, realizing that if I want to get anything done, it's got to be sub 90 degrees, and it's about 87 degrees at this point. And so what I've arrived at, after numerous methods that were mostly dependent on me, I mean literally bailing out by hand, kneeling down, squatting, bailing, and carrying about 500 gallons, I would say approximately, with just my own physicality and no real prosthesis. But because I'm so tore up now with cramps and exhaustion and bruises, I don't want to lose any of that water any more than I have to evaporation, because the sun is fully back. We're back up to 110, 115 degrees. It's very difficult to sleep again. So I'm just more degraded than ever, but I can't afford to lose basically what could be a year's worth of rain that came down overnight, that I'm going to need to rely on. So what I'm doing here is I am giving myself a bit of mechanical support so that I can minimize the amount of steps I have to take and the amount of squatting and lifting that I have to do, so that I can become far more efficient with the help of gravity and with the help of what you'll see in a minute is the implementation of this funnel going through some silicone tubing that I am using the multi-tool to screw the hose clamps on to reconfigure the appropriate fittings and the appropriate length of what I'm going to be doing here, which is basically making it so that I can, again, have a very efficient workflow and minimize the most strenuous activities, which now it feels like I've run a mile after I've stood up or squatted once or walked 2 feet, and I can barely even put one foot in front of the next without being afraid I'm going to throw up, pass out, or fall over, or all of the above. So by this point, I've got all that gear rigged up and mocked up. I'm kitted up as I need to be. The sun is up, so I don't have to worry as much about scorpions. And this is the resting position so that I can have this setup basically in place over the course of however many days it takes for me to get back to some form of a baseline of performance, which means hoping that I get back to normal, that the pain and injuries that I'm dealing with are going to resolve, because what's under that tarp is about another 200 to 300 gallons. And the reason I folded it over the way it is, it's still got a little bit of a layer at the top that's creeping up and out, is that I'm just trying to minimize evaporation. But I don't like the way it's folded over there. There's a lot of coyote activity. I would see them, as they have before, with all kinds of different things. They'll hear or smell an animal get under something, and then they'll just tear everything apart. So they could breach that, ruin the tarp, and they could lose all that water for me. So I don't want to waste time. I want to get this done, but I can barely move. So I did a little proof of concept here, and if you notice how slowly I'm walking, it's really like I'm walking for the first time. I need to brace myself as much as I can. And then the reason for adapting this tool about midway through this rainwater rescue mission, as it became, was that I needed to be able to. I have such some kind of crazy cramp all the way up and down my left flank of my left leg on the outer side, to where it's so stiff I can barely do anything. So I've got to just minimize the fulcrum action and just use my arms really and barely hold myself up with my legs, but don't do much else with my legs. So that's why I'm using gravity after the bilge pump attempt failed. That would have saved me, but it did not work out because of problems with the distance and the rating of the motor and whatnot. So I'm leveraging gravity here, and I'm making it so I can, as I optimize this, it'll just be one fluid motion without bending and just gently twisting to get a little bit of water at a time and have it be minimal exertion to lift it to the point where it's above the receptacle can, and then it flows easily into that can. That can fill up, and then I can either walk back, whatever is more comfortable, walk back that truck wheelbarrow cart that you see there. Actually, it's somewhat ergonomic in the sense that it kind of works like a walker. I can rest with it and it can hold some of my weight, so it's very convenient in that way. So I'll either be taking trips like that, or I will be without having to bend the knees or the back, just be able to use arm strength to ergonomically fill pails. And then here I am at the end of that, barely made it back to safety, and I'm just stretching the hamstrings on what is basically an ability multiplying bar that I use to climb in and out of a truck bed. And then you see this left leg, it's having a hard time even straightening out. So you can imagine it looked easier than it was, but if you hear me huffing and puffing, you'll probably feel some of that pain. But luckily now, hopefully the evaporation slows down, and if it takes me a month to get even half of what will end up being left, then at least I got the majority.